What up, heavy mommies, and welcome to the Cosmic Perspective. I want to talk about a couple things today, and one of them is going to be really silly, so bear with me, but I think it tells a larger story at the same time. So I live in Chicago, for anybody who doesn't know, and in Chicago, the grocery store that I usually end up going to for convenience factor and it being, a walkable distance is Jewel Osco. And for my fellow Floridians, think of Jewel Osco as like a shittier version of Publix, but definitely in the same tier of grocery store. And I swear to God, every fucking time I go to that stupid store, there's never enough workers. And every worker hates their fucking job. They hate their job, and they're always out of bags all the time. Like, they're literally always out of bags. You go to the vegetable aisle, you got to go find like a bag roller like 3 aisles away. Like, it's so annoying. It's never within reach. Like, you want to just grab a piece of broccoli and you look up to the one above you and you're like, it's empty. And it's fucking always empty, and they're never in a rush to fill it. And I want to make sure that people understand that this is not a knock on the employees. It's a knock on the management, because to me, they don't pay their workers enough money. And so I'm not going to bash the workers, because I actually feel like they're being exploited heavily at the store. But it's really frustrating because you can feel that they don't give a fuck about their workers just from like the demeanor of the workers, as well as the fact that they always feel so desperately understaffed. They really do. And so every time I go there, and I will say, I do go there, after work or like in the evening, but I don't always go super late, so it doesn't really, to me, justify the lack of workers, because even if I've gone at like a rush hour period, they still don't have enough workers for the aisles. And almost every fucking time, I end up bagging my own shit. And I think it's so annoying that I go to a place, and this is going to sound so first world, and I totally understand that, but keep in mind, these jobs pay people a living, to some degree. I don't even know if it's fucking a livable wage, but, I go there, and I'm going to check out, and I always have to bag my own groceries. And so I bring my reusable bags and whatever, and so I go through, and I'm going through the checkout line, and there's always just a cashier. There's never a bagger for them. And there should totally be a bagger, like purely from the basis of like process and efficiency. You really just need a bagger there. The cashier's going and scanning and trying to add to it, and they'll eventually bag, but have a dedicated bagger that bags your shit. I just don't think it's that hard. And not to mention, you're paying somebody to make money at least. You're giving somebody an opportunity to make some sort of a living. And I know that that's not anybody's ideal job, but it's a job nonetheless, and it at least pays enough that people can work with it. And so I think that's really frustrating that they never have enough people, and then I'm bagging my own stuff, but like, I'm not getting a discount. I'm not getting any money off for bagging my own stuff and basically doing work for them. This is work that Jewel should be hiring people for, because part of the reason why you go to the grocery store is so that somebody can help you bag your stuff, And then, not to mention, they have these self-checkout things, and I'm not even going to get into self-checkout yet, but like, the self-checkout is literally pure exploitation of us as consumers. I feel like grocery stores are progressively making us do more and more work and cutting out more and more jobs for their own workers, than forcing them to do more work per shift in a way that it's like, they're already doing a job that sucks. Like, it's customer facing. You're already having to deal with annoying people all the time. So to put undue stress on the worker and to make them have to deal with that bullshit, like that, it seems anti-worker to me. So that was very frustrating. And this happens literally every time I go. I don't think there's been only a handful of times that they've actually had a bagger, even when the line is fucking like out the door. Like, you got a line of like 7 people all trying to go in this one aisle that's open, because of course none of the other aisles are ever open. It's always like 1 or 2 aisles, and then the 1 or 2 aisles only have the cashiers. So it just feels like capitalism at its worst, just embodied in the grocery store. And then on top of that, they built a new self-checkout area, which then has to be manned by somebody. They have to have somebody there to monitor to make sure people aren't stealing shit. But then the robot always assumes you're stealing shit. The robot always assumes you're stealing shit. And it is fucking frustrating because I bring my own bags, like I said before. So anytime you bring your own bags, you basically confuse this fucking robot. I'm assuming there's some camera system or something that's studying. And I think they also have some sort of weight distribution thing, because if, God forbid, you just place it, like sometimes I bring my backpack or whatever, or I'm just like, I grab something on the way home from work, and I just want to use my own bag. And then I put it on there and it's like, please remove the stuff from the bagging area. Please remove the whatever from the bagging area. And I'm like, dude, I'm just trying to pack my own fucking bag. I'm trying to save the environment. I'm trying to help people. I'm trying to make the world just a little bit cleaner. And this thing responds by basically freaking out that I put anything in the bag area in the first place. Then you scan your shit and then you're just putting it in your bag that you brought. And then it freaks out like, please remove the unscanned item. I'm like, dude, I just scanned this fucking item. What are you talking about? This isn't unscanned. It's like, please remove the unscanned item from the bag area. And it's constantly freaking out, which then guess what? Always results in like one of the workers having to come over, scan their fucking ID badge, and like tell the computer system to chill the fuck out. And this happens constantly. And I'm not the only one. Like, I'm technologically literate. I perfectly know how to navigate scanning and choosing what it is. It's that the system freaks out if you put anything in any spot that's slightly outside of what it expects. And then it's constantly like flagging it. Like it's I think it's trying to just assume that everyone's a thief. And it's like, hey, everybody's a thief. They're always stealing. Assume negative intent constantly. And so then you're constantly having to be like, having to explain to the worker, like, dude, I'm not stealing anything. This thing's stupid. I put this in my own bag and it's just not doing it. And it's so stupid because I'm like, what really freaked it out the last time I had to do this, because of course they didn't have any workers. In fact, they didn't have a single aisle open. And I don't know how the fuck that happened, because my roommate said that he used an aisle right before me. And then by the time I got there, it didn't appear that any aisles were open. They all had the closed sign. There were some workers that were kind of hanging out and talking to each other, but they did not seem like it was open, because I otherwise would have opted for the person, because I know how infuriating the checkout is, the self-checkout. And so I take my full bag now and move it out of the way. And that was like, oh no, you committed the cardinal sin of moving a bag to replace it with another one, because I put then a new bag in that place, the new reusable bag. And then it freaked out until I had to get another worker to come over. And this happened twice. This happened twice in this process. And I'm just trying to check out my groceries. I'm paying for it. I went through the process of doing this and scanning it. Like, you really think I'm going to steal shit at this point? And some people will say, like, people do, and they'll steal one or two things and then buy all the others. Whatever, man. I'm not that person. If I'm going to buy it, I'm just going to fucking buy it. And I hate that it puts zero trust in the customers at all. And that it's always assuming the wrong shit. And it's so easy to like confuse the system. Like, you scan something, you have to weigh it. Sometimes it like doesn't want you to just weigh it. It like wants to get somebody over to make sure that you grab the right fruit or the right vegetable. It's just like, dude, fuck these systems. If you're going to automate something away, do it right. Don't make it this annoying, frustrating process that literally pisses off your consumers every time they have to use it. I mean, I remember when they first rolled that thing out, and it was like every 3 seconds, the lights fucking flash, they draw attention to you. It's also embarrassing, like, because you're like, dude, I'm not doing anything wrong, but this thing is fucking wasting my time. And so then there are other ways that like you can automate things and it's fine, right? So I will say, like, one automation that I know eliminates jobs, but it honestly is better, is the McDonald's ordering system, and really fast food ordering systems in general. It's actually really nice to be able to go into the fast food thing, you press what you want, you order exactly what you want, and then you just get your little thing, your little receipt that has your number on it, and then you just wait for your order to come up. So you still have people working in the back, and they're still doing their thing. And if you want to talk to somebody, you can. But if you don't, and you just kind of want to like get your order in and not deal with any of like the social thing, then that's great. So for the people who are ashamed to eat fast food, like sometimes I am, it's great to not have to tell people, how much of a fat ass I'm going to be on this next order. So it's it's an aggravating thing that literally happens to me every week I go to the grocery store, where there's never enough workers, or I've been subjected to their fucking evil self-checkout system. And I had to talk about it because it's so infuriating. And I know other people are so going to be like, yeah, I've been through that and I fucking hate it too. Because it's stupid. It's so stupid. Okay. I know that was so unimportant and so first world, and I totally understand and appreciate that. But I just wanted to say how mildly infuriating that was, and still is to this day. So I'm recording this podcast. I couldn't get a guest this week, but I do have a few different guests that I've talked to that have either been on the podcast or I've wanted to have them on. And so I'm trying to get some dates lined up to have them on. So my main goal is to just always have an episode for every week. And so this is to make sure that I have an episode this week. But that being said, I always have things to say. I'm a fucking talker. So I will always look for things like throughout the week and try to think about like lessons or things that I've learned, and I'll try to implement that in there. I also want to be a little more silly, because the reality is I'm a goofy motherfucker. If you really know me, I'm always cracking jokes. And so I want to make sure that translates, and I'm not just always Mr. Super Serious, like, let's contemplate life right now. I do like to have a good time. I love Chris D'Elia and his Silly Goose Time. I think the premise of that is just awesome. So for anybody who hasn't listened to his podcast, I highly recommend it. He's super funny. And I'm all about the Silly Goose Time. I'm definitely a true baby. I want to go to the log cabin. I fully support Chris D'Elia and his podcast. But I think it's important to like just kind of fuck around sometimes. Like life is not that serious. I mean, it is, but it also isn't. And there are some awesome ways to like integrate deep lessons and philosophical reasonings and all that, right? But then there's also a good time to just fuck around and have a good time. So I wanted to talk about some music that I've been listening to, because I feel like that's something that I want to be a part of this podcast. I want to not get copyright claimed, though, so I haven't really figured out how to do it. Because I did, if anybody's listened to some of my, like, I've had some album reviews and I've talked about hip hop songs and stuff in the past. But when I put them on YouTube, they immediately get flagged and taken down and blocked in like 7,000 countries. There's not even that many countries on the planet, but it's fucking annoying because they're like blocked in every country that matters, like for views. Obviously, every country matters. All human lives matter, blah, blah, blah. Not all lives matter, though. Fuck that. Black lives matter. But you know what I mean. I'm not trying to fucking start a political thing on that. But literally, human life is a precious thing regardless. And that means even after conception, because I am going to make it political. But seriously, I think it's just annoying that the YouTube copyright system is so abused, and like you can't even talk about music without it getting flagged. I'm like, dude, I'm reviewing this song. It's like the most fair use case of all time, right? Somebody like playing a little bit of a snippet, analyzing it, breaking it down. To me, that is like the definition of fair use. I mean, it's a transformative piece, right? I'm not just listening to it to play it through. Like, dude, if somebody's listening to this fucking track because I play it for 30 seconds at a time and then pause it and then talk, then dude, get Spotify or Apple Music or SoundCloud. Like, fucking get something else. That's not the right way to listen to music. But if you want analysis and you want somebody to analyze like the tracks and listen to the songs, then I think that that's a totally valid use. And in fact, if you look at the H3 podcast lawsuit, or not podcast, but the H3 lawsuit between fucking creepy dude who made every script about him picking up girls and looking cool. I can't remember his name. Matt Haas. Yeah, there you go. Matt Haas. That lawsuit made it very clear that if you're clowning shit and you're putting analysis on top of showing whatever the content is, then that's totally fair use. And I think the fact that, small channels like mine, like I'm not gonna be able to fight that in any meaningful way. If some record label wants to come at me because I played 30 seconds of a fucking song, like they can just do that and just fuck me over and block me, copyright strike me. I can be like, hey, no, this is fair use. And then they'll be like, nah. And that's it. And I have no recourse and there's nothing I can do about it. So it's frustrating. It's really frustrating because I love music and I would love to analyze some shit. I love lyrics. Like that's something that I really am passionate about. That's why I highlighted King Los, who's, somebody in the rap community, people know who he is, but and maybe if you've seen the Netflix show with Chance, can't remember the name of it right now, but in that Rhythm and Flow, D Smoke, shout out to D Smoke. But in Rhythm and Flow, King Los is like the lyrical teacher. He's like their lyrical guidance in the studio. So when they're making the songs, like he's helping, with the lyrical stuff. And King Los is one of those guys who is so good lyrically, like literally on another level, like alien level, that I love being able to break down his shit. And I think not enough people even know who he is. And I would love for people to give him more recognition for what he really is capable of. And so the fact that I can't do these things that I want to do, and I can't make these videos because I know that they're going to get copyright claimed, I'm going to have to fight it, and it's going to get taken down, and then it gets back up, and then re-upload. Like, it's literally stopping people from making content that they want to make because they don't want to get copyright claimed. And I think that I get it. We want to protect the copyright holders, but there's a better way to do this, because people literally go around and manually tag shit. There's literally entire businesses that are formed that are designed to take down any video that has anything because they want the money. They literally, even if it's like 3 cents, they're like, yes, fuck this creator. We're going to do it. We're going to steal all this money. And it's just unethical. It's really unethical. So anyway, I want to talk about some music that I've been listening to. At the time of this recording, Mac Miller's album came out like a week or two ago. And it's good. It really is. It really feels like a complete Mac Miller album. Like, I don't feel like there is an insane amount that John Brian, I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, finished up with, because there were several songs that actually were complete by Mac Miller. For anybody who doesn't know the context, before he died, he was, I don't even remember if he even got to tour his album or if he was about to go on tour for the album. But about 90 days into the tour, he was supposed to drop this album. So this album was meant to be complimentary the whole time. So it definitely, I mean, it's more musical, it's less hip hop, but it definitely doesn't feel like it's a whole new album with a new concept. It was like the whole concept was swimming in circles. And so they're very complimentary. They feel like, almost a double album in some ways, with similar themes, but definitely its own self-contained thing. And it's good. I really like it. I really like Blue Worlds. I think that song is a banger. That's like probably the most hip hop song on there. Good News is a great song. That's a good single. I Can See is like, damn. I mean, some of these, it's so bittersweet listening to, because you hear it and you hear the pain that he was going through. And I mean, he didn't kill himself. I mean, it wasn't on purpose. He had some shit laced with some fentanyl, and unfortunately that OD'd him. Now, was he being reckless because of his demons? Yes, but was it on purpose? Did he mean to overdose? I don't think so. I think it was unfortunately a really stupid death that, not to blame him, it's just more like sometimes deaths are dumb, like a car accident. It's a dumb death, like especially ones that are from like drunk drivers. Like, that's a dumb death that was easily preventable. This is another one that was pretty preventable, but also you don't know what he was going through. And, there's a lot of signs in his music that kind of show the pain that he was going through. And even in circles, I mean, he's talking about it and he's being honest about it. And, in the song Good News, he's talking about like how people only want to hear when you're doing well. And he's like, sometimes it's not the case. So I think it was a really good album. I really enjoyed it. And I highly recommend you guys check it out. So rest in peace, Mac. He was really, it's so annoying because he was really finding his sound. I really thought that he was hitting his stride and really coming into his own as an artist. And I felt like he was continually getting better pretty much every album. Every album I saw an improvement in him, and I saw a development where he was really doing some interesting things. He was making some good, sounds and melodies, and it's just frustrating when an artist so young and so talented gets taken from us so early. And that is yet another reason to not get into those drugs. I mean, again, not to blame him. It's a tough thing. And especially, I know he says in like a documentary, he says when you're rich, like, he was always the type that he would be like, willing to try stuff where they'd be like, hey, you want to try this? And be like, sure. And he would try it. And then on top of it, like, he had a lot of money to be able to buy a lot of it. And that was his own words, but it's frustrating because you feel like, the right influences around him should have been able to stop him from that reckless behavior. And that being said, I know a lot of people did tell him to chill out. But it's sad. It's just sad. There's just no way around it. It's sad. I wish he didn't die. Everybody dies, but like not everybody needs to die from a fucking drug overdose. So, the opioid epidemic, man. I mean, this is why we have to legalize all drugs. Like, we have to legalize and regulate all drugs, for a couple reasons. One is it literally makes things safer. Two, it's not criminalizing behavior, because addiction becomes so much bigger than your first couple uses of a drug. Excuse me. It's just like, addiction is one of those things where once you're in it, it's very difficult to break free of it. And if it's criminalized, that means that you don't even have like the best access to deal with those things. Not to mention rehab is extremely expensive. And because we don't have healthcare here in America, you don't have any real ways to like take care of it unless you have a lot of money to throw into rehab. And so that's where, there's a failure of the healthcare system that plays a huge part in this. On top of the fact that big pharmaceuticals got into selling these drugs in the first place, because the opioid epidemic was created from the legal prescriptions that were being overprescribed or prescribed by some dirty doctors, these pill mills in these different states, where they were literally ordering more pills than people by like a lot. So it's a really multifaceted issue that stems from big pharma ultimately trying to push things that they pretended were not addictive, but they were. They literally said the oxycodone was, oh yeah, it's like heroin, but not addictive. Fucking, as we all know now, it's clearly very addictive. And the whole thing is frustrating because those people should be in jail, literally. I think we should jail every single one of the executives that knew what they were doing and that were selling these horrible drugs that got people hooked from the simplest things. Like, doctors were telling people like, oh yeah, it's not a big deal. Like, it's fine to just take these, for pain management. And then people would get hooked on them, not even realizing that it was so addictive. And then you're creating addicts out of people who otherwise never would have just done heroin. But then once you get hooked on these things, it hijacks your reward system. It changes your brain in a way that, you need the fix. And what's frustrating about it is that once they were no longer able to do the pill mills, which is a good thing, I'm glad that they stopped that, we didn't do anything for the people who got addicted to these things. We didn't give them ways to deal with it because, it's illegal. And so then they would go to heroin because heroin was way cheaper. And eventually it got to the point where, a lot of people were doing heroin on the streets because they couldn't get those pills anymore. And then that's when fentanyl came in. And fentanyl started showing up as this like way more potent version of heroin. And by the way, there are like way better people to get this information from. But I'm giving you a summary of it because I think it's all directly related to how Mac died. Because he literally died partially because he had fentanyl in his system. He also had alcohol and cocaine. So, just a deadly combination of drugs in general. But still, I think he probably wouldn't have overdosed if it weren't for the fentanyl. The fentanyl, I think, is what set him overboard. And this is all stemming from a legal system that created this crisis. And then we shifted to illegal versions of these things, which are not regulated and have been cut with some bullshit. And then we jail people when we find them with it, And that's the part where it's like the whole war on drugs has obviously been a failure. No one's doing less drugs. This hasn't changed, what people are doing. And that's because this war on drugs was never about the health part. It was never about, it's a loving government that wants to make sure that we take care of our citizens. Like, no, that's not what this is. This was literally meant to demonize certain populations of America, which then we used our power to push it against the world. But It was meant to disenfranchise black people. It was meant to disenfranchise the hippies, the sweeping psychedelic act, in accordance with everything else that they made illegal, was meant to demonize these communities on the news every day. And literally there's Nixon's administrator, one of his administrators, was quoted saying that like we couldn't make it illegal to be black or against the war, but we could make it illegal, for these things that are associated with these communities, and then we could demonize them on the news every day. Yeah, we knew what we were doing. Like literally, I mean, find the quote. Maybe I'll link it in the description, but it's horrifying what he said. And the fact that we still have these laws despite all the evidence and all the science, and then you have all these politicians that gaslight you and say like, oh yeah, well, we need to study it more. Well, okay, but because of your scheduling, it's like fucking so hard to get any funding or anything for these studies. And even Joe Biden, this motherfucker's still against the legalization of weed. What? How are you against the legalization of weed? Are you fucking stupid? Like, that's such a dumb position to have if you're on the left. And that's why when AOC said that, if we were in another country, we wouldn't even be in the same party. That's the truth. It's because, like she said, there is no left party in America. And it's true. There's no left party in America. We have a far right party, the Republican Party, which is, Jesus Christ, they've gone off the rails in the last several years. And then we have the center party. And the center party never wants to upset power, never wants to upset the money interest, but is willing to throw some social bones. Oh, yeah, gay marriage. Okay, fine. Okay. I can't even think of other policies, honestly, because they don't stand for any. That's the frustrating part, is like they really don't stand for anything. And guess what? Anytime they talk about bipartisan effort, it means bipartisan to help the establishment. It's never bipartisan to help people, because the Republicans will never give you that. So the left has to exist in this small little faction that doesn't actually hold any power and barely can even get the Democratic Party to support their ideas. I mean, and even when they do, they like pretend to, but then they don't really, and they don't follow through, and then they don't even try to appease the voters in any meaningful way. So it's very frustrating when we have systems like this that are so obvious, like the drug war, that we then do nothing about, because the people who are on the left aren't even fighting hard enough to stop these things. And guess what? You know how you beat the cartel? You legalize the shit and you take away their profit. You're not going to beat them in a war, like a physical war with guns. That's not helping anyone except the military-industrial complex. Oh, that's why. It's because it's always to fund the military-industrial complex. They want to sell more guns. They want to sell more weapons. And they don't care who they're selling them to. Because, we'll have battles where we're fighting with our weapons against other people fighting with our weapons. It's like I just watched The Last Jedi recently with my girlfriend. And in that, there's the scene on Canto Bight, the casino planet. And they talk about like how, they're selling to the First Order. And then I can't remember his name, dude. People are going to be so mad at me for not remembering somebody. He's a super famous actor. But he's the dude with like the stutter. And he talks about how it's like, hey, they sell to both teams. There are no good guys or bad guys. Everything's kind of a gray area. Well, that's exactly what it's like here in America too. We fund fucking horrible people that fight against other horrible people all the time. I mean, that's kind of part of our foreign policy, is propping up little groups that we think have, they're like an enemy of my enemy is my friend type situation. And so you have things like the war on drugs, you have all these conflicts that we get in the Middle East, and there's no left party to stop any of it, which is so frustrating. And I get it. There are going to be some people who listen to this podcast and they're not left-leaning. They don't support some of these ideas. I understand that. I disagree with you, but that's okay. If you actually genuinely hold a view and you're going to be honest about it and you're not going to just scream like, oh, but Venezuela, then fine. Then I think that we have a real, debate that I think we can talk about the ideas. I personally think that progressives kind of win on the ideas, because if you actually look at the math and the science and everything, like, you can kind of see where just certain policies, which by the way are not being advocated by the Democrats. So I am not defending the Democratic Party in any way. But those ideas, they kind of win on the basis of common sense and logic and really studies of other countries doing it and implementing it successfully. Portugal decriminalized all drugs, and although that's not as good of a step as legalization, it's definitely better than the U.S.'s system. And it's worked really well. Overall drug use is down. The criminal activity around drugs is down. It makes it way better, because you're basically, decriminalization is not far enough to me, but if you legalize the drugs, you force it into a regulated market. Now, this doesn't mean you can just go down to Walgreens and just buy some cocaine. I think that's part of the regulation part, right? There are going to be certain aspects of, how can we prescribe these drugs? I'm okay with the idea of like heroin centers for people to get off of them, where we give them a safe place where if they want to do it, they have safe needles and all these other things that, like, we can wean people off of these drugs by giving them safe places for them to do them, to get their fix and to slowly wean off. And I think that should always be the goal embedded within those systems. And I think there's no reason why we couldn't publicly fund it, especially if we had something like Medicare for all, because then that would just be part of what we pay in our taxes. And so instead of paying out of pocket in these kind of scenarios, you pay a little bit more in taxes, but you save a lot more out of your pocket, because you're not paying copays, you're not paying premiums, you're not paying deductibles. And so I think a combination of all of these things are going to be really important for transforming our horrible war on drugs and transforming really the negative cycles, or as I know Bernie likes to call it, like the diseases of despair, which I think is a really good way to describe it. Because a lot of the times that people get into these drugs, with the opioids, it's a little gray, because part of it was like literally they might have had a surgery and then they got hooked on it from there. And that's just unfortunate. But there's a lot of people who get into some of these more hardcore drugs from problems, like, emotional problems, not being able to deal with them. And if we can't cover mental health, I feel like everybody should have a therapist. And I say this as somebody who, I don't have one, but I want to get one. Because I think that that's something that everybody should have. Everybody should have somebody that they can talk out their issues with, and somebody who's trained on this stuff and who knows how to deal with it, because not everybody's equipped to solve their own problems, at least not right away. I think you are eventually, and you can learn those skills, but you need to learn from somebody who knows what they're doing. And I think it's really important to factor in our mental health as part of our physical health. And they do feed back into one another. What you're eating also is going to help how you feel. So if you're eating good food, then you're going to feel better. And when you feel better, you're going to make better decisions. And it kind of is a positive feedback loop. And so I know that some people in this world, or in America, some people are just dumb, right? And it's not a knock on them. I think they deserve life of dignity. I think they deserve to be able to have all the great things that other people have. But some people are just dumb and they just make bad decisions, and it just is what it is. And that's just how they are. But that doesn't mean that we can't create systems that make it easier for them to make better decisions. And I can understand people's pushback of not wanting to nerf the world, so to speak. And I'm not even proposing that, but I think, if you guys are familiar with bowling, I think it's okay to put the railings up for people who need them, because some people need railings. Other people can bowl and it's fine and they don't gutter all the time. But some people are just so bad at decision making that they gutter all the time. And I'd rather, instead of them guttering and creating a negative feedback loop and rippling all across a bunch of other people, because guess what? We don't live in a vacuum. We're interdependent. As much as people like to think that they're individuals and that they have this individual freedom, you don't. You're part of a system. And, you can move independently to a degree within the system, but you're ultimately relying upon everyone else. Everything that's in this room was made by somebody else that I don't fucking know, like with very few exceptions. And so that's the thing, like we rely on other people to create all of our stuff that is in our society. And so if we know that we have to rely on other people, and we know that we're interdependent, and we know that any decision that we make is going to affect another person, then shouldn't we have systems in place in our society that prevent people from making the really dumb decisions that really negatively impact all of us? I think so. I really do. And that doesn't mean that everything has to be a governmental answer. There can be organizations and groups and whatever, but there are certain things that you literally need the structure of a government to be able to do it. And by the way, government is simply an allocation of resources, right? Taxes are incentives. And so we're incentivizing people to do certain activities because the government itself isn't going to do it. But if it can give tax credits or subsidies to specific things that actually help instead of like natural gas and oil, if we can subsidize things that incentivize positive feedback loops and structures that allow people to benefit, like, from national parks, public transit, highways, trains, high-speed rail, all that stuff, right? Airplanes, airports, all of those things, like, we want to incentivize development in, right? We want to make these things better so that everybody benefits. We all use these things. And that's the importance of universality. We need things to be applicable to everybody, because then the second you start making it only for like poor people or whatever, it just gets demonized by the right wing and it gets cut all the time, and that's like one of the best things is like, see, government didn't work because we didn't fund it properly and we wanted it to fail, but see, government fails. And it's like, no, you created that. But when you make something universal like Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid, those things are universal and therefore have more power because everyone's invested, right? I'm investing in it and I'm getting a return on it. And so why can't we reallocate, certain funds to be towards things that have a proven track record to help society, that have a proven track record to make people's lives better? I don't think that that's radical. I just don't. And you can agree or disagree with me on, big government and blah, blah, blah. But to me, big government is government that tells people, what they can do with their bodies. You're not allowed to play with your consciousness. Nope. You're not allowed to smoke that plant. That plant makes your brain feel different. And I don't like that. I don't know why I gave it a southern accent, but like, why? Why do we let the government control that? But then we don't want them to help, give the infrastructure and the resources for things that actually help people. And, with Medicare for All, this isn't a government takeover of your health care. That's some fucking fear-mongering shit. All it is, the private system is still in place, meaning hospitals, doctors, private practices, whatever. But the healthcare system is a single-payer system, meaning the government is the only one who's paying those people. So the structures themselves are still private, right? The hospital can still run the best way that it thinks it can, but the funding that it gets is coming from the government. And then on top of it, we still can put in regulations and controls so that they can't just charge out the ass for no reason, just to charge the American government. There's got to be protections in place, and, we can talk about the minutia, but I think the premise of it is pretty simple, and literally every other modern nation does it already. So, but America's bigger, it's different. Yeah, but we're innovative. We have a lot of people that can figure this shit out. So I think what's so funny is the people who criticize it the most are the ones who try to like do that jingoism, America, team fuck yeah, all that. But then they want to be so self-defeatist, like, oh, well, we could never figure that out. That system would never work in America. It's like, why? Aren't we the greatest nation? We're the richest country in the history of the world. Literally, the richest country in the history of the world. And yet we can't figure out a healthcare system that works for people when we've been advocating for it since JFK. I watched a speech of JFK being like, my opponents don't think that we could do healthcare. And like, we've literally been fighting this fight for fucking, it's going to be, it's like 60 years now, just a little under 60 years. So, and it's even longer than that because I think FDR also kind of advocated for that. But, the premise is that we've been fighting this fight for a long time. And we get gaslit by these pundits and these people who have great insurance, who don't give a fuck whether you do or don't, who never talk to regular people and have no perspective on what the average person actually feels like, and doesn't know what it's like to go into the doctor and even with your insurance be paying out the fucking ass for some procedure that it shouldn't cost that much. And that's the other thing too, is our cost controls are crazy. I didn't mean to turn this into a fucking Medicare for all thing, but I really do think that almost everything ties back to it. I think it's one of the premier issues of our time. And I think that healthcare is a human right. And, we can't expect do you really want to live in a system where if you don't have enough money, you die? Like, is that cool with you? And you know what? I talk to conservatives where that is cool with them. Now, it's cool with them until they're sick, and I guarantee you they'll fucking change their tune. But, you know, some people just don't know how to put themselves in other people's shoes. Like, they just don't. And they're not horrible people because of that. They just, like, they're just not that empathetic, you know? But you don't need to be to understand the functional reasons and the actual cost reasons, which, by the way, everything gets cheaper in that system. And the death lines that exist already exist. They exist if you don't have enough money. And I hate the argument of like, oh, but you're never turned away from a hospital. It's like, yeah, but if you need constant treatment all the time and you need to pay for medication, all that, you know, you are turned away if you don't have enough money to buy the medication. So there are people rationing insulin. There are people who ration their medication and they die. They literally die because they are not actually giving themselves enough. So to me, this is my number one issue, like 100%. I've gone to so many fucking doctor's offices where I went in, you know, before I had insurance, like I went in and I was treated like a second class citizen there. I was like, oh, you don't have insurance? And you can just see the tone shift. You can just see the way that they treat you like, oh, this motherfucker's not gonna be able to pay this, you know? And I hated it. I hated feeling that because I felt like I was looked down upon by everybody in the fucking office. And man, the amount of money out of pocket, even when I had insurance, and I have insurance again now, but like even when I had insurance with my last job, like I still paid a lot of money out of pocket, like to do basic procedures. And that's what's so frustrating to me is like, you know, they want to talk about, well, you know, if you have insurance, you can keep it. It's like, keep what? What decisions do I get to make with insurance? I don't get to make any decisions with insurance. I don't get to make decision on who my insurer is. My employer decides that. They can change that anytime. They can take it away at any time, technically. And now, granted, I have worked for good companies that don't do that, but it's possible, right? We saw that with the GM, with their, you know, they were striking and they took away their health care. So, you know, that's dangerous to let a company have that kind of power over you because your health is everything, you know, and when you're sick, there's nothing you care more about than wanting to be healthy. So they have that power. Then I don't get to pick my doctor because guess what? It matters whether it's in network or not in network. And, oh, we're expanding our network. We're making it bigger. And it's like, yeah, but how about in a single payer system, a Medicare for all system, you can go to any doctor you want and it's always covered because that's just how it works, right? You don't get to make any decisions with, well, I guess I really covered that aspect of it because I feel like the doctor is really what most people care about, right? There are certain people they trust, they've gained a rapport with, and then if they change jobs, which actually that's another thing too, is like if you change jobs, you lose your health care. Or you have to change to another one, which then maybe your doctor who you love and you've gone to for 10 years now is no longer in network, which means you pay more out of pocket. And then the fact that you're paying a premium every month and you're paying co-payments and you're paying deductibles, it's like, what about the system makes sense? It literally doesn't make any sense. And I remember sitting in on the insurance plan at my new job as like, you know, part of the new year, open enrollment coming around. And the whole time I'm listening to it, I'm just like, why are we okay with any of this? This shit is like disgusting. You know, this is people's lives. And we're talking about like, oh yeah, well, you only have to pay $2,000 out of pocket if you have this plan. And as long as they're in network, well, they'll cover 80% of it and you'll still pay 20% for the visit. And then all exams, you know, you pay 40% of it and the insurance will cover 60. Like, dude, fuck all of that. That is way too confusing. How about I go in, you do the tests, they're all covered, and I pay for it through my taxes. At the end of the year, I pay for it through my taxes. That's just a bill that I don't have to think about. I don't have to think about filling out forms. I don't have to think about any of that shit. Come on. Like that to me, like I can't even believe we live in the system and that people have accepted it for as many decades as they have. And especially now in the age of the internet, like, come on, we know that this shit's ridiculous. We literally know that this shit's ridiculous. It's insane. This is an insane system that if you lived in any other country, and they had that video of a bunch of British people being asked how much they thought an ambulance cost and how much they thought all these other things cost, and they were like dumbfounded, like, holy fuck, Americans pay that? Yes. And we do not have the highest outcomes. We do not have the highest, well, we do have the highest cost. We have the highest cost. We don't have the highest outcomes. We do have wait times. We do have other barriers. You know, the whole argument, there's no choice in America with healthcare. There's literally none. There's none. You have no choice. And the illusion of choice, it's not even the illusion of choice. There's no illusion of choice. You just straight up don't. But then they try to tell you, if you want your plan, you can keep it. Like fucking Pete Buttigieg. If you want your plan and you like it, you can keep it. Who likes their insurance company? I'll wait. Because no one likes their insurance company. Literally nobody likes their insurance company. I want you to find me one fucking person on this planet. And by this planet, I mean only America, because we're the only one that has this stupid fucked up system. Find me somebody in America that's like, I like my plan. I like paying my deductibles and my co-pays. It's awesome. I really like it. Fucking nobody feels that way. Literally nobody. And nothing makes me hate the healthcare system more than going to these doctor offices and having my time wasted. You know how many times I've gone in and like not been properly taken care of or not given antibiotics when I actually needed them? I'm going to tell you guys my own little healthcare story because I think this is really important to this story on why I feel so strongly about this, because I've just been fucking slighted by doctors all day long. I was in college and we had an infirmary that was covered as part of our tuition. It was what I had to go to because I couldn't afford to pay for doctor's visits all the time. You know, I didn't have any money in college and I didn't have health insurance in college. And I know that, you're under your parents' insurance until you're 25. Well, my parents didn't have insurance for me. They couldn't afford that. And that's not their fault. You know, my mom had insurance for herself, but she couldn't afford the payments if she was going to try to cover the whole family. And I wouldn't have wanted her to, drown herself in that for it anyway. And so I go to the infirmary, and at the time I was dealing with like sinuses, I was like sore throat, whatever. And they go in, they're like, it's just a cold. Like, you're probably fine. Just let it go. Well, the next evening, my eardrum ruptured because my sinuses got so congested and the pressure got so strong, it literally ruptured my right eardrum. And this was the most painful pain I've ever experienced in my entire life, like straight up. And I've broken a finger. I've gotten hurt and injured in football and in baseball. I took a line drive to the forehead when I was in 7th grade, I think, 6th or 7th grade. So trust me, I've taken some heavy damage, okay? And I'm a heavy mommy. I'm strong, but I've taken some damage. And this pain was like taking a knife and just fucking twisting it, and just twisting it all the time, and just for like hours. I literally went to sleep. I literally cried myself to sleep because of the pain. I couldn't make the pain go away. I maxed out on the amount of Advils I could take. At the time, I was living in the dorms in my freshman year of college, so I couldn't. I couldn't do it. I think I put on an episode of Community. It was like the paintball episode. I put that on because it was like one of my favorite episodes of that show, and at the time, that was when I had like started binging that show. And I did it to try to distract myself, and I somehow went to sleep, and I woke up. I was still in immense pain, and I ended up going to a fucking Minute Clinic in like a Walgreens or something after that. But I couldn't go that night because it was too late, and I knew I couldn't afford the emergency room. So I knew I had to just wait, and I had to wait it out, and I had this fucking ruptured eardrum, and they looked at it and like, oh my God, your eardrum's ruptured. And so they finally, they gave me the antibiotics, and lo and behold, that did help and whatever. But that was because a doctor was like too lazy to really fucking do anything, So my faith in doctors is pretty low already, as is, right? I already don't trust them. But then when I go there and they waste my time, right? I'm there on time. They make me wait fucking 30 minutes. And then I finally get in, and then they want to rush me out. Like, all right, cool. Yeah, you're fine. Bye. And like, that's always how I feel. I never feel like they value my time. I never feel like they actually want to hear my concerns. I never feel like they take me seriously. I've never enjoyed going to the doctor. And then on top of it, to add the fact that I have to pay $100 for the visit, I fucking hate it. I really do. And I believe in science. I believe in medical science. I believe that, there are good people in the healthcare system. But that being said, I have not had a good experience with fucking anybody. I really haven't. I would say my best experiences I've ever had, like with the medical system, have actually been dentists, which I know is like some people's like fear. But honestly, I had a really awesome dentist growing up. Shout out to Dr. Johnny Johnson. He's awesome. He was always like, he had amazing bedside manner. I felt like he actually remembered me. You know, he was like a dentist done right. And I also, Dr. J, who's been on my podcast, he's been my dentist here in Chicago. Sorry, I haven't been in a little bit, but he's out of network, you know, and that was fucking bullshit. And he's the shit, man. And I love Dr. J. But like, that's a rare thing for me in my experience. Almost all of my doctors have sucked. And the fact that I'm paying out of pocket and I'm paying all these costs for these tests, and, you know, sometimes they want to run tests. I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. I don't really think I broke anything here. Can you just skip the x-ray? I really don't want to pay another $100, you know? And, you know, if I didn't have to worry about the cost of every little test, then I could do those tests and it wouldn't be like such a stressful thing for me. So I have my own personal vendetta about this stuff. These things have personally affected me, and I have seen how you can just be fucked by not having enough money. Now, luckily, I've never been in a position where I've not been able to afford a procedure that I took. But I have seen how I'm treated when I didn't have insurance, and it's horrible. There really is a difference, because when I got insurance and then I went to the doctors, I definitely didn't feel that same discrimination. So the whole thing, it's very classist. It's very like, if you're rich enough, you're fine and you'll get great health care. But then if you're poor, like, you're fucked and you will die, and you'll literally die. And there are, even under Obama's, you know, Obamacare, I hate calling it that. I think it's a stupid name. But under that, you know, the Affordable Care Act, that had no cost control. It had an individual mandate, and it basically allowed the insurance companies to just keep racking up the prices every year. You know, the only way to do it is to make it a single payer system. You have to eliminate private insurance. I mean, there's just no way around it. And I get it, and it's unfortunate for the people who work in those industries, but, like, you know, we can't not do something just because, like, some people are going to lose their job. Like, I'm sorry, but, like, progress is progress. Sometimes an industry is dangerous, right? The oil industry, like oil and gas, like, I'm sorry, but you're ruining the planet. So we got to divest from that, and we got to start investing in these other energies. And a lot of the people that work in those industries can go to those other things, and even those same companies can just change where they're putting their money. But I understand it's going to be disruptive. It is. It's inherently disruptive, and it is a real thing to think about. And I do think that it's important that we are just with the transition for the workers and giving them an opportunity to find other work, or to give them jobs within the government that can help maybe with this new healthcare system, right? Their skills might still be useful because they're familiar with what's going on with doctors and all that. But this system as it is cruel, it's evil, it's unusual punishment. It's just, if you came from any other place, you really would understand how fucking insane this whole thing is. So for me, this is my number one issue on this election cycle, and that's why I'm voting for Bernie Sanders. I'm voting for Bernie Sanders because he's the only person that actually is going to fight for this, and people's lives are literally at stake. Now, I'm also voting for Bernie Sanders because I think he's right on a lot of other issues, and he's not as radical as people think he is. But that being said, like, this is my number one issue. This is the thing I care the most about, because I don't want to see anybody suffer the way that I've seen people suffer in the system, the way that I've seen the harms of this system. And I think it's probably the most important issue of our lifetime that we need to fix this time. We really do. We can't do some half-measure public option bullshit, because guess what? The public option also doesn't have cost controls and also allows for private insurance to still exist, thus causing all of this waste, this administrative, managerial waste of actuaries and all these other things trying to, how can we make profit on somebody dying? How can we not pay out? Their entire system exists on, how can I not actually pay out this person, right? How can we find ways to make them pay as much as they can? And how can we find ways to steal as much money from the people who don't need our insurance at all? You know, and that's what to me makes no sense, because it just shouldn't be profit based at all. It just shouldn't. We should be focusing on healthcare outcomes. We want people to be healthy. And preventative care is always cheaper than trying to solve a problem after it's become a problem. And if people were able to go to the doctor and not worry about the cost of it, guess what? You're going to have a lot of people preventing a lot of issues before they get worse, which, by the way, drives up the cost of those things. You find cancer in the beginning stages, it's a hell of a lot cheaper than finding cancer at the late stage, as well as less deadly. Early detection is important for stopping cancer. So to me, this is like the number one thing. And I didn't realize that that's where I was going to go with this podcast. But that's why I love podcasts, right? I love solo episodes in particular because it really just lets me free flow and kind of just go with the ideas. And once I get going, I get fucking fired up, man. I get passionate. I care about this shit. But to me, it's like there's nothing more important than your health, literally. And everything else matters so much less than when you're sick. When you're sick, like you don't care about anything. Like you just want to be better. And I don't think somebody should die because they didn't make enough money in their life. We're more than the money we make. We're humans. We have human lives. Like we can affect other people. We can give love. We can give compassion. We can help our fellow man or woman, and the fact that we're willing to profit off of the deaths of our fellow Americans is just, it's so egregious. It really is. It's a moral crisis. But even aside from the moral crisis, because I know some people that doesn't appeal to, they don't give a fuck. It literally costs less money. Straight up. Our current system costs us way too much money. And a Medicare for All system saves us, I wish I remembered the numbers, but it's like $30 billion or something like that. Let's say, I don't even want to do let's say, because there are real numbers. And if you look into the real numbers, you'll see that the current system costs us way too much money over the next 30 years. But if we implemented a Medicare for All system, we will save ourselves something like 30 billion or something like that. Don't trust me on the numbers on that. Look into it yourself. The information is there and it's available. Maybe I'll find an article and put it in the link in the description so you guys can see it, because this stuff is too important, man. We can't be fucking around. And that's why we can't fuck around with some of these candidates who are they're just not that into it. They're just not that into the whole process. Like, I'm sorry, we can't. We need to do this. We need to take care of our people. And I can't see another way other than the single payer. I can't. Now, I have no idea how long I've been recording here. But I think I'm going to end it here. And seriously, guys, if you're on the left, if you believe in these policies, there's only one choice. And I'm not saying this to be like, my guy's right and I'm always right. It's like, no, like literally issue for issue. When they actually poll the American people, Bernie is voted as most trusted on every major issue. Literally. Healthcare, the military, all these things. He's voted the most trusted. He's supported by more veterans than any other candidate. Why do you think that is? The candidates just, they don't really stand for anything, man. And most of them have sold out to the corporations. And Elizabeth Warren, man, she was like the best one of those corporate Democrats. And boy, has she fallen from grace in this one. Calling Bernie a sexist was just a bad move. Like, no one seriously believes he said a woman couldn't be president. Are you kidding me? He really said that? Mm-hmm. I'd love to know the context. Oh, well, I don't want to talk about it. And this is when? Oh, right before Iowa. Oh, okay. Yeah, the whole thing is like, come on. At this point, they'll do anything because guess what? The establishment doesn't really want real change. They're okay with just the incremental. They want to just give you the scraps. Let me just give you a little bit. I'll give you some pieces. Sure, yeah, we'll insure a little bit more people, but we're not going to get rid of the insurance companies or, yeah, we won't go into Iran, but we're going to keep fighting the proxy wars. It's just, if you really want real change, there's only one candidate. It just is what it is. You don't have to agree with him on every policy to know that he's at least fighting for you. And by the way, he's not going to be able to pass everything anyway. So, to me, I just want somebody who has vision, who is at the helm, who can lead and inspire. and bring people together. And guess what? Bernie does that. He brings people on the right. He brings people on the left. He brings people in the center. And, we can debate about what the center actually even is. But there's only one candidate that does that, and it's Bernie. And I'm not saying it just because I'm shilling for him. It's because he's passionate. He's got a record, and people believe him. People know that, like, when he stands for something, he really does. And he's got the track record to prove it. He's got the voting record to prove it. And nobody's been more right on issues before it was popular than him. I mean, he's been right about literally every issue except the Afghanistan war. That's the only one. And by the way, only one person, Barbara Lee, was correct on that. Everyone else was wrong in the House at the time. So he was right on Iraq. He was right on all these other things. He was right on the crime bill. He was right on the bankruptcy bill, which now makes it so students can't ever forgive their student loans. There are so many things that, like, Biden was literally on the opposite and the wrong side of, that Bernie was on the right side of. And this is before the hindsight 2020 of saying, oh, well, now I made a mistake. It's like, no, he was fucking right. He doesn't have to apologize for, like, almost anything in his record. There's only a couple things he's got to apologize for because, hey, nobody's perfect, and I don't agree with Bernie on every policy, but I don't need to know that this dude is the best guy that's being offered, and he's the most genuine, and he's going to fight for you. So I didn't mean to turn this into a Bernie ad, but I mean, this is just how I feel. I really am passionate about this stuff, and I actually really care about the policies. I don't care about the person. Bernie happens to be also an awesome person, and he's really principled. But, like, it's not the cult of personality, dude. It's his policies. That's why people like him. People don't like him because, oh, he's an old curmudgeon man. Like, are you kidding me? Oh, he's so sexy. Like, no. We like him because the dude's honest. He's truthful. He tells you what it is. And he's been on the right side of history. So you just can't compete with that. He's the only dude who has this kind of record. And he's actually the perfect foil to Trump. He literally is the perfect counterpuncher to him because guess what? Bernie gonna clap back. Bernie would smack him in a debate, which is why Trump is already talking about not doing the debates. He will smack him in a debate because he actually represents true populism and actually represents the issues that these people who flipped from Obama to Trump, he gets them back. And I don't think that we should be only aiming for those people. I think we should be aiming for a really broad coalition like Bernie has assembled. But, like, he's the only one who can kind of appeal to both sides because people respect him and at least know he's honest. And you just won't find another candidate like that. He's a once-in-a-lifetime candidate. He really is. And I know a lot of people who are my friends who are flirting with the idea of Elizabeth Warren. A lot of people know that Biden sucks, so that's good. But unfortunately, Biden right now is being propped up. And the dude's weak. He's got so many things that you can point out to being like, that was corrupt, that was corrupt, that was a bad decision, that was a bad decision. Ooh, that's kind of bad look. Ooh, Hunter Biden. He's so weak. Like, do you really want to put that guy up against Trump? Because guess what? Trump is not going to pull punches, dude. Trump is not going to, have the decorum and follow all the political rules. He doesn't, he'll shoot below the belt all day long. Well, guess what? He can't do it to Bernie because Bernie's uncorruptible. Bernie doesn't take a single billionaire dollar. That's powerful. That's something where he can be like, well, I'm not owned either, Well, let me tell you, Mr. Trump, you are a racist and a bigot. He'll fucking eliminate him. And Trump would be like, yeah, but he's crazy. Socialism is bad. Venezuela. And then other people are going to be like, yeah, but actually, Bernie will specifically be like, well, Mr. Trump, you support socialism for the rich. And he'll talk about how, we give all the money to the corporations and we're willing to give them money, but we're not willing to help our own people. So to me, there's only one candidate. And if you actually care about beating Trump, he's the only guy that pulls consistently blowing Trump out of the water. So if we're actually talking about facts and numbers and we're being honest and we're not being disingenuous actors like a lot of these people on Twitter, he's the only guy that can do it. So with that, I'm going to end this podcast. Thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. It feels good to be back. It feels good to be recording these. And I hope you guys enjoyed it, man. Peace.